confidence that the Democratic Party will sort through this debate, right, and figure out the right way to go forward so that we can win and govern. Because if we want to beat Donald Trump, which should be our #1 objective, we've got to do it with a candidate who can build a big tent so that progressives, moderates, independents, and even those disaffected Republicans all get on board. Because if we do that, we'll beat them and we'll govern. Questions? Yes, sir.
This country is facing many issues, but right now one of the key issues is immigration. Where do you stand on that?
So I'm generally a forward-looking person, but this is an issue I actually look backwards on a little bit. My position is we should bring the comprehensive immigration reform bill that passed the U.S. Senate. Amy was there, she was working on this, right, with significant bipartisan support. And it would have passed the House of Representatives where I was serving, never got a vote. And President Obama would have signed it into law. That bill is the ultimate kind of smart compromise in Congress, right? It did stuff for border security, it created a pathway to citizenship for the 11 million undocumented residents in our country, and it reformed our visa programs, which need reform. So that's where I stand. Right? And one of the things I've pledged in my first 100 days as president, my agenda will be existing bipartisan legislation in the Congress. Because I want to look at the American people and say, I represent every one of you, whether you voted for me or not. And to prove it in my first 100 days, these are the things I'm going to focus on. Things that your good-minded Democratic members and Republicans have worked on. And comprehensive immigration reform, like that bill in 2013 we can do. I would also do more on asylum. My wife and I went down to the border about a month ago, and we went to a place called Dilley, Texas, which is where the largest detention facility exists in our country. There were 1,700 women and children in this facility. And the reason we went down there is my wife's just stepped down as the chair of the board of Georgetown Law Center. So we took 14 law students and 2 law professors down to help these people seek asylum. And I gotta say, listening to the stories of these women and what they're fleeing in Central America, every single person in this room would do exactly what they're doing. So in addition to comprehensive immigration reform, like we almost had in 2013, which I would put my full shoulder behind, I would actually do things to make it easier for people to seek asylum in this country and deal with the terrible situation in Central America. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I just want to go back just a second to what you're talking about Donald Trump. I watched the Democratic elite define the election as Donald Trump. I watched the transition as defined by Donald Trump. I watched the first 2 years of his presidency as defined by Donald Trump. Donald Trump's still there doing all the damage.
Right.
If our goal is focused on Donald Trump, we lose. If we do the work of building the constituencies across this country that need to be worked together, Donald Trump becomes irrelevant. So it's not about Donald Trump, it's about that other work.
So I didn't hear a question there, but I definitely...
It's your chance to respond.
But if you noticed, other than making a comment about our competing hairlines, which I would say is the one thing I would say he probably has over with me, but I didn't mention it once.
Yeah, you said the most important thing is to beat Donald Trump.
That's right, in a question, because it is. Right, we cannot make this election about his fitness for office. We all know he's unfit, right, and unqualified for the presidency, but it's not about that. It's about what we're going to do. It's about what we're going to do to create jobs in these towns. It's about what we're going to do to lower drug prices. It's about how we're going to create a universal healthcare system that doesn't involve throwing out 1/6 of the U.S. economy and starting from scratch, because that's a terrible idea. It's about how we're going to deal with climate change and actually make a difference. It's about how we're going to put this country on a fundamentally different fiscal trajectory. It's about how we're going to ensure that the American people who have no privacy right now, right, none at all, right, have some privacy. It's about what we're going to do. You know, in 2030, people estimate that artificial intelligence and automation will displace 50 million jobs. This is what Andrew Yang talks about. He's right. I don't completely agree with his prescription, but we should have a strategy. You know, the EU has one, Germany has one, China has one. They have articulated artificial intelligence strategies. Right? The current president's economic policy is coal, steel, and aluminum. Right? Our policy should be renewables, right? It should be technology and it should be infrastructure. That's the way we got to talk about it. Yes, sir.
Why does George Will think you're a better moderate Democrat than the other moderate Democrats?
Well, you know, listen, George Will, who has been kind of a, I mean, the reason you know that is he basically wrote a very flattering, almost endorsement piece on me, and I decided to send it around. And I got to say, some of my team members didn't like that idea. They said, you can't send George Will endorsement of you, if you will, to these good Iowa Democrats. I said, why not? Right? There's nothing in that I disagree with. Right? He basically said, I believe in the life that I have lived. I have lived a life where I've been very blessed and very fortunate. I have lived the American dream. But the reason I was able to live the life I've lived is because people helped me along the way. I didn't do it on my own. I had union electricians giving me a scholarship. I had a society back when I grew up that actually cared about the next generation doing better than the prior one. So I think what he saw in me is someone who actually believes in our way of life, believes in the freedom and liberty that is so central to who we are as a people, but actually believes there's a role for government to provide that helping hand and look out for our citizens. So I think he thought I struck the right balance. So I think that's why he did it. Yes?
How are we going to overcome the Republican security?
Well, we've got to get rid of it. Right, so Justice Scalia, who wasn't known to broadly interpret the Constitution. That's a joke. No, seriously, he wrote an opinion saying how Congress can actually deal with gerrymandering. Right, so we can deal with it in the Congress of the United States. I have a bill called the Open Our Democracy Act that makes Election Day a holiday and requires independent commissions. Now, you here in Iowa have been much more progressive on this topic than other states. And I'm sure you think you've got more to do. But relative to certain parts of this country, I mean, it is one of the most insidious forces we have. The combination of gerrymandering and money in politics and voter suppression, those three things converging together have created a Congress that absolutely doesn't represent the American people, right? And so we need a president who basically is running on getting rid of gerrymandering, running on doing things to get money out of politics, and will stand up for people's fundamental right to vote.
You mentioned 1958 and the middle class strong.
Yep.
How can we get back to middle class being stronger?
So we have to invest in them, right? That's my opinion. We have to invest in them. There's a couple ways we've got to invest in them. One, we've got to invest in them through the tax code. So I've called for a doubling of something called the Earned Income Tax Credit, which is the most successful way to use the tax code to put money in the pockets of hardworking Americans. That'll help them right away. The other thing we should be doing, investing in our country. You know, we've cut our infrastructure investment in half as a percentage of our economy. It used to be about 5%. Now it's about 2.5%. And China's is 8.5%, just to put it into perspective. So we need $1 trillion infrastructure program. That'll create a lot of demand for middle-class jobs. We've got to do things to improve our education system. Every kid in this country should start with pre-K as a right. It's the absolute best investment we make. And they should get something after high school, either free community college or career and technical training. I'm calling it pre-K through 14 should be the new K through 12. Right now, 70% of the kids who graduate from high school in this country are not eligible for the military. Think about that. So clearly they're not ready to get the kind of job. We haven't given them the skills they need. I've called for national service, not mandatory, but a really exciting program to get kids to serve their country in infrastructure projects and all this kind of stuff. So we have to fundamentally invest with them. We got to invest in them in the short term by putting money in their pockets. We got to give them universal health care so that they can always try to get a better job and not be held back because they're afraid about losing their health care. And then across the long term, we've got to do fundamental things in our education and workforce training systems in this country and institutions in this country so that they have an opportunity to have the skills they need. So instead of kind of trickle-down economics, we need kind of middle-class out economics. I think that's the last question there, and I'm getting the hook.
Do you have an example of something that you've changed your mind about?
That's a really good question. What about it? I mean, You mean from a public policy perspective? Because I probably, you know,
I mean, ideally.
I
but
thought I had a
take
couple
on.
options for lunch, and I was. So what have I changed my mind about? You know, I think I was one of these people who was running around saying everyone should have free 4-year college at one point. And then I thought about that a lot, and I thought that that's actually not a good idea. Right? We encourage too many people to go to college in this country. We ought to be orienting more kids towards career and technical training, which is why my proposal now is pre-K through 14, because I think if you create 2 years of free community college or career and technical training, that gives people the ability to continue their 4-year education or go on and get a job. So that's one thing from a policy perspective I changed my mind about. Good question. Thank you.
I saw a piece on television that was a Venezuelan child who was unable to get insulin.
Right.
I feel like we're not very far from that here in the United States. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, look, we need a better healthcare system in this country. Everyone should have healthcare as a right. And we have this terrible situation with pharmaceutical companies, right, where the prices are, I mean, the government should negotiate with pharmaceutical companies. That would lower prices and lead to more access. But, you know, the other problem is the whole world is free riding on us on pharmaceuticals. You know, the U.S. consumer basically funds the whole pharmaceutical industry. And I think that should be a trade issue. I think the president should bring that issue to the table and basically get the G20 to pay the same amount for pharmaceuticals that we do. That'll lower prices here. But stuff like that helps expand access, because you're getting at an access question, which is every kid should obviously have right to the health care they need to stay alive. And insulin is central to that if you happen to have, you know, be in a position to. Megan, I know you're going to get mad at me if I stay up here, so. And I want to be invited back. Thank you, everyone. God bless you.